a rivalrous game, true information about reality is a source of strategic competitive advantage. If I know where the gold is or where the water is or whatever as a tribe, but there's not enough for the other tribe, then I want to hoard that information from ourselves. And because I don't want the other tribe to stumble upon it, I even want to disinform them about where it is, right? And so you'll notice that in any competitive game, any rivalrous zero-sum type game, disinformation emerges, not just withholding, but actually disinforming. It's what a bluff is in poker, or it's what faking left and going right is in soccer or football, right? Like we see it everywhere. And of course, we see it in the history of tribal warfare all the way on to, advanced civilization type dynamics. But the problem is in rivalrous games, multiplied by a world with exponential information technology, we get exponential disinformation capacity, meaning that we can have a Facebook feed that ends up having an AI algorithm that optimizes it for stickiness for you, which means whatever hijacks your limbic system the most, which means whatever version of information ends up appealing to your in-group dynamics and your biases and your fear and susceptibility and like that, and totally independent of actual good information. And so if we think about the world today from the point of view of the damage, not just to the physical commons, but to the epistemic commons, because there's incentive to have disinformation. Well, how the fuck can we solve any problems if we don't even know what the problems are? Because the epistemic commons is so destroyed that nobody has sense making. How do you do good choice making without sense making? Well, you don't, right? And so if we ask, well, how long do we have before the coral die off? What will the effect of the coral dying off be? Will they all die off, or will thermally resistant species emerge? Are they dying off mostly from temperature or from pH change, from carbonic acid, or from nitrogen effluent affecting the phosphorus cycle, or from trophic cascades from a loss of the large fish and whale species? So how do we deal with that thing? Why was North Korea about to be in nuclear war with us a year ago, and now everything is fine for the first time since the 70s? What the fuck happened? Did they really have tactical nuclear capabilities? How much stuff really leaked out of Fukushima? Is Fukushima solved now? What is the real risk with AI? Elon says it's too late. Bill Gates says there's no risk at all. What we find is that on the most concerning issues in the world, that are the most pertinent to the continuation of life on Earth, everybody gives up on sense making or defects to believing what their in-group believes because it's too fucking hard to actually figure stuff out. And when I say defect, I mean defects on their own sense making. And so rivalrous dynamics are going to lead to not only physical warfare and economic warfare, but also information and narrative warfare, which the pollution of the epistemic commons through that ends up being a destruction of sense making and the capacity to even know what a good choice would be, to even know what issues we're trying to make choices in service to. And so, of course, if we have more people with more power per capita, totally, that is increasingly blind, moving increasingly powerfully and quickly, that's not a good scenario. And so here's something I had mentioned with regard to this one and sense making is so many people have tried to figure out the vaccine thing, right? Like, wait, are vaccines totally safe or are they totally bad? Or is it like maybe the ones that cure polio are worth it, but not the flu ones? Or maybe the problem was thimerosal, but without the thimerosal, they're fine. Or they try to figure out was Lyme disease a bioweapon, or they try to figure out what really happened with 9/11 or whatever it is, or the current state of AI. And they get so much conflicting information that they just fucking give up.
Yeah.
Right. And they give up on actually making sense of it. But then what happens? You have to say, well, what does it mean to give up on making sense of the world you live in the most consequential topics? Well, it's a form of nihilism, right? It's a kind of epistemic nihilism, because if reality is meaningful, then I need to understand it to know how to interact in an appropriate way. And if I give up on understanding it because it seems impossible or too fucking hard, can I actually make choices that are aligned with what's meaningful if I have no idea what world I live in?
Mm. Mm.
And so, something I can talk about what is emerging or not, or what I would encourage is for people to look at the nature of their epistemic drive and their epistemic nihilism, and like how much are they actually committed to making sense earnestly of the world they live in as a basis to have their choice possibly be meaningful.
Mm.